What if everything you believed about getting old was wrong? Mildred sat in her worn kitchen chair, the faded linoleum beneath her feet cold and unforgiving. The soft hum of the old refrigerator was the only company she had this evening. Her hands, veined and trembling, rested on the table, fingers absent-mindedly tracing the worn edge of a coffee mug. At 68, the days had become a slow, dull procession, each one folding quietly into the next like the pages of a forgotten book. She felt invisible, a ghost in the house she had once filled with laughter and life. The years had slipped through her fingers like sand, and now, trapped in this quiet solitude, she wondered if her best days were behind her forever. A small ache grew in her chest, not just from loneliness, but from the weight of dreams left undone. Across the room, an old tablet flickered softly, showing a news clip she had paused earlier. Elon Musk, with his usual restless energy, unveiling plans for a humanoid robot meant to help with the kind of tasks people like Mildred struggled with, lifting groceries, opening jars, even just keeping company. If something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor, Musk's voice echoed from the clip. Those words, casual and offhand, landed like a spark in dry kindling. Could she be too old to change? To start over? Or was she simply waiting for permission to matter again? The question swallowed her, leaving a hollow curiosity that refused to fade. She wiped a tear from her cheek, then, almost on a whim, hit subscribe on the video channel and left a comment, watching from Cedar Falls, Iowa. What pushes me forward? Hope, even when it feels impossible. It felt strange to reach out, to connect beyond these four walls, but maybe this story, her story, could be different. The hum of the refrigerator was replaced by a quiet heartbeat in her ears as Mildred's mind drifted back decades to a time when she was someone else entirely, a young woman with fire in her eyes, a sketchbook full of inventions, and a belief that she could change the world. She'd once dreamed of building machines, clever devices that could solve everyday problems. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Marriage, children, loss, and the steady erosion of health had pushed those dreams to the margins, tucked away with a faded photograph of her first invention sketch, folded and yellowed with age. She remembered the pride she felt, showing that crude blueprint to her late husband, only to be met with a shrug and a warning to stop chasing foolish ideas. The memory stung now like a wound reopened. Time had been both a thief and a teacher. As the years piled up, so had the regrets, the roads not taken, the words left unsaid, the bridges burned or simply faded with neglect. Even the gentle conversations with her daughter had grown scarce, replaced by silence and polite avoidance. "Mom, you need to slow down," her doctor had warned just last week after a minor fall. "You're not as young as you think." But the truth was, Mildred did not want to slow down. She wanted to burn brighter, to feel the rush of purpose again. Yet, the world around her seemed to suggest otherwise. Friends stopped calling. Advertisements for retirement homes and medical alert devices filled her mailbox. Society had boxed her into a corner labeled, "past her prime." Then, out of nowhere, Elon Musk and his Tesla bot, his promise to bring robots into everyday life, pierced through the fog. Could a machine, something created by human ingenuity, be the key to reigniting her own spark? The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. What if this was her moment to fight back against the creeping silence? Mildred's heart quickened, her fingers itching to do something, anything. That would remind her she still mattered. She reached for a notebook, dusty and forgotten on the counter, and began jotting down ideas, her handwriting shaky but determined. If Elon could defy the odds, why couldn't she? As she scribbled, the years seemed to peel away, replaced by the vibrant pulse of possibility. Yet, even as hope bloomed, a familiar voice of doubt whispered in her ear, "Is it too late? Does anyone care?" The tension between fear and hope settled deep in her bones. She glanced at the photograph of her younger self taped to the fridge, the woman who once believed she could invent the future, and whispered, "Maybe it's not too late after all." Outside, the wind rattled the windowpane, carrying with it the scent of rain and a promise of change. This was more than a fleeting thought. It was a call to arms, a reckoning with time itself. For the first time in years, Mildred felt a surge of defiant energy, a quiet rebellion against the idea that age was the end of the story. Somewhere in the distance, the hum of the world moving on without her was drowned out by the pounding of her own heartbeat. This was the moment it all changed. And she wasn't ready to fade away just yet. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Mildred had spent the better part of her life quietly slipping into the background. For most of the past 2 decades, her days had blended into a monotony of small, lonely rituals, mornings spent brewing weak coffee she barely drank, afternoons flipping through dusty library books she no longer borrowed, and evenings staring out the kitchen window at a world that seemed to have no place for her anymore. Once, she had been a school librarian, a guardian of stories and knowledge, a person who connected generations through words. But retirement had felt less like a relief and more like a sentence. It was in those silent years that regret slowly crept in, regret for the life she had wanted but never fully chased, regret for the fractures in family ties, regret for the dreams shelved and left to gather dust. She thought often about her daughter, Susan, who had grown distant over time. The last meaningful conversation between them had ended in frustration and tears, both too proud to bridge the widening gap. Susan's voice, clipped and cold over the phone, still echoed painfully, "Mom, maybe it's time to accept that you can't keep trying to be someone you're not." Those words felt like a final verdict, a dismissal not only of her efforts but of her very existence. It was easier to retreat, to avoid the sting of rejection, but the ache of loneliness only deepened. Her husband, Henry, had died 10 years ago, and since then, Mildred's world had shrunk even further. He had been a kind man, but practical to a fault. He never believed in her inventions or her wild ideas. In the early years of their marriage, she remembered showing him her crude sketches of gadgets she dreamed of building, devices to help with everyday chores, to make life simpler. His reaction had been a heavy sigh and a warning that she should focus on what matters. Those words had stung more deeply than any harsh criticism because they came wrapped in love but felt like a cage. Over time, Mildred stopped talking about her ideas altogether. She folded them away, like the faded photograph tucked inside an old shoebox beneath the bed. That photograph was a snapshot of the woman she once was, young, eyes bright with possibility, fingers stained with ink from late-night sketches. She had believed then that the world was full of undiscovered wonders just waiting for her to invent. The photo had become both a comfort and a reminder of what had slipped through her fingers. Her body now told a different story. The arthritis in her hands made it difficult to hold a pen for long. Her back ached after standing too long. The energy that once surged through her veins was now a faint pulse, often interrupted by fatigue. She feared that her best years were behind her, and with that fear came a creeping sense of invisibility. In public, she felt like a ghost drifting through crowds that no longer saw her. The once bustling community library, where she had spent so many years, was now a quiet place filled with younger faces and digital screens. The laughter and chatter she used to treasure had given way to silence and screens. She often wondered if anyone remembered her there. Yet, beneath this weight of loss and solitude, a flicker of something else remained, a stubborn ember of hope, buried but not extinguished. That ember was what Elon Musk's words had reignited. The idea that age was not a prison but a challenge to be met head-on stirred something deep inside her. Mildred remembered sitting in her kitchen the night she first saw the news about the Tesla bot. The sleek, humanoid robot Musk had unveiled promised to help with everything from heavy lifting to companionship. To Mildred, it symbolized more than just technology. It was a sign that even at her age, she could still build, still create, still matter. For the first time in years, she felt a stirring of purpose. But that purpose came with its own storm of doubts and fears. Could she really learn something new? Was her body strong enough? Would anyone believe in her? The world had moved fast, and she feared she had been left behind. Still, Mildred decided she would try. She began with small steps. One morning, she cleared the clutter from her garage, dusting off old electronics and scavenging broken appliances for parts. Her hands, though shaky, worked with renewed determination. She dug out books on robotics and engineering from the library and read late into the night. Each page turned was a small victory, a reclaiming of a part of herself she thought lost. The days were not without struggle. Her neighbors eyed her with curiosity and sometimes pity. "Why bother?" they'd say. "Isn't it time to slow down?" But Mildred brushed off their doubts. If Elon Musk could dream of rockets and robots, then she could dream of her own creation, even if it was just for herself. The garage became her sanctuary, a place where time bent and faded away. Tools that had once intimidated her became familiar friends. Circuit boards and wires whispered secrets of possibility. She sketched designs on napkins and scrap paper, her old hand steadying as her passion returned. Yet, not all battles were external. Susan's voice haunted her, sharp and unforgiving. "Mom, stop embarrassing yourself," she had said during their last visit. "You're wasting your time." Mildred held back tears, but inside, a storm brewed. She wanted to prove Susan wrong, not just for her daughter's sake, but for herself. She wanted to remind the world, and herself, that age was no barrier to reinvention. Some nights, Mildred sat alone, surrounded by half-finished projects and memories, questioning whether she was chasing a fantasy. But then, Elon Musk's words echoed through the room, a mantra against despair: when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. That simple phrase gave her courage to press on. The longer she worked, the more her confidence grew. She began to believe she could bridge the gap between her past and present. Her robot wouldn't be the sleek, polished machines of the future. It would be imperfect, maybe even clunky, but it would be hers, a symbol of resilience and hope. Her mind traveled back to the photograph taped on the fridge, the young woman with a spark in her eyes. "I'm coming back," she whispered, voice trembling but fierce. Life had tried to dim her light, but it had only made it burn brighter. And so, with each small step forward, Mildred reclaimed not just her dreams but her very self. She wasn't just waiting for permission to matter anymore, she was taking it. This was the life before the shift, the quiet before the storm, the lost self beginning to stir awake. The inner war was relentless. Mildred woke each morning to a battle in her mind that no one else could see. Was it too late? Did anyone even care? What was the point of trying when the world had already written her off? These questions gnawed at her like an invisible chain, holding her back even as her heart whispered to break free. The tension grew stronger when Susan called. "Mom, you're just going to hurt yourself." "Slow down," she said sharply, concern masked as criticism. The doctor's words echoed, too: "You have to be realistic about your health." Both voices blended into a chorus that urged her to give up, to accept fading into the background like so many others her age. But Elon Musk's presence was different. His relentless drive, his refusal to accept limits, pierced through the fog. She remembered watching a clip from a podcast where he said, "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough." That line hit her hard. What if failing wasn't the end but part of the journey? The Tesla bot's unveiling was everywhere: news, social media, conversations. For Mildred, it became a symbol of possibility, a defiant reminder that age and circumstance didn't have to dictate her fate. She found herself watching interviews, reading articles, absorbing Musk's mindset like a lifeline. Still, the inner conflict didn't vanish. Each day was a push and pull between hope and despair. When she tried to explain her new project to friends, she was met with raised eyebrows or gentle warnings. "You're ambitious, Mildred, but maybe this isn't the time." Her neighbors whispered that she was chasing foolish dreams. The loneliness deepened as skepticism grew. Yet, inside her garage, where the soft glow of a single lamp illuminated wires and circuit boards, Mildred felt a fragile peace. Here, the outside world's doubts faded into background noise. Here, she could be the inventor she once dreamed of becoming. She wrestled with her own fears, too, the fear of failure, of embarrassment, of being laughed at. Some nights she lay awake, heart pounding, imagining her robot prototype malfunctioning in front of a crowd or worse, never moving at all. But then came small victories that steadied her. A motor that finally whirred to life. A circuit that responded as expected. Each success chipped away at the mountain of doubt. Elon's words played like a soundtrack to her days: persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up. It became a battle cry. Outside, society's message was clear: slow down, accept the quiet, fade away. Inside, Mildred's mind rebelled. She refused to be a footnote. She wanted to matter again, not just to herself, but to the world. The inner war wasn't just about building a robot, it was about reclaiming identity, purpose, and self-worth. She began journaling her thoughts. Dark moments balanced by glimpses of hope, the oscillation between despair and determination. One entry read, "Some days I'm a ghost, other days, I'm a spark." Her connection to Elon's vision grew deeper. Musk's rebellion against limitations wasn't just about technology, it was about defying age, fear, and failure. She carried his spirit with her as armor. Yet, challenges mounted. Susan's visits became less frequent, her voice cooler, her patience thinner. "Mom, you have to be realistic. I don't want to see you hurt." The words stung because they came from love, but also from a place that didn't understand. Mildred longed to bridge the gap but feared her daughter's doubts more than anything. The local doctor warned of her slowing heart rate, her increasing fatigue. "You need to listen to your body," he said. But Mildred saw the doctor's caution as another form of dismissal, a societal reminder to give up. The conflict between body and spirit deepened. Some days, exhaustion forced her to rest; other days, her mind raced with ideas she could barely contain. The world outside continued its rapid pace, new technologies, new inventions, young innovators claiming the spotlight. She felt invisible yet defiant. The news about the Tesla bot dominated headlines, sparking debates about the future of work, companionship, and aging. Mildred immersed herself in these discussions, feeling a kinship with those who dared to dream beyond their years. At night, she dreamed of a different future. A world where she was not sidelined but celebrated, where her ideas mattered, where her age was a strength, not a limitation. The inner war was exhausting, but it was also a crucible forging a new Mildred, one who refused to be defined by years or setbacks. Slowly, hope began to outshine fear. She realized that this battle was less about building a perfect robot and more about building a perfect life on her own terms. Elon's words reminded her that the future was not given, it was made, by the brave, the stubborn, the relentless. And Mildred was ready to join them. The one thing Mildred changed was simple, but it was a bold step that ignited everything else. Inspired by Elon Musk's relentless tinkering and refusal to accept limits, she chose to begin walking every day. It was not a grand gesture but a declaration, a physical act of defiance against the inertia that had claimed her. The first morning she stepped outside, the air was crisp, the sky a pale canvas smeared with dawn. Her knees creaked, her breath came in shallow bursts, but Mildred kept moving forward, one slow step at a time. The sidewalk beneath her shoes was rough and uneven, much like the path she'd been walking inside her own mind. Yet each footfall felt like a small rebellion against the whispers of doubt. She imagined Elon, pacing through his factories, testing rockets and robots with boundless energy, never afraid to stumble. That image fueled her determination. The neighborhood was quiet, neighbors still tucked away in their homes, but Mildred noticed small signs of life, a robin fluttering on a wire, the scent of fresh earth from a nearby garden, the soft hum of morning traffic. The world was waking up, and so was she. As days turned into weeks, walking became more than just exercise, it was a ritual of renewal. With each journey, Mildred discovered strength she thought she had lost. Her body, though slow to respond, began to remember movement, not just as a necessity, but as a source of vitality. She found herself pausing to watch the sun streak the sky with color, feeling the warmth on her face like a promise. The simple act of walking transformed into meditation, a way to quiet the inner war and listen to the quiet voice of hope. But the change didn't stop there. Mildred opened a blog, tentatively at first, sharing her story with the world. She wrote about the struggle of aging, the sting of invisibility, and the spark she found in Musk's vision of a future where innovation had no age limit. The words poured out like a river breaking through a dam, raw, honest, and fiercely hopeful. She wrote, "I am 68 years old. I have failed, I have been forgotten, but I am not done. If Elon Musk can dream of robots to change the world, I can dream of changing my world, one step at a time." To her surprise, the blog gained traction. Comments flowed in from people who saw themselves in her story, others who felt left behind or too old to try again. Messages of encouragement warmed her heart. A woman in Ohio shared how Mildred's words pushed her to start painting again after 30 years. A man from Texas admitted he had given up on his dreams but found new courage reading her posts. This small community of dreamers became a lifeline. Meanwhile, the garage transformed into a workshop buzzing with activity. Mildred was no longer just the woman who dreamed, she was the woman who built. Her robot was taking shape, clunky at times, but real. The mechanical joints creaked and motors hummed under her careful hands. Each component represented a victory over fear and fatigue. Her invention wasn't perfect, but it was hers. The project demanded patience and resilience, qualities Mildred had rediscovered through daily walking and writing. Yet, the journey was not without setbacks. Components failed, circuits shorted, and her body rebelled with aches and exhaustion. There were moments when tears blurred her vision, when the weight of years seemed too heavy to carry. But each time, she thought of Musk's words, "Persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up." Those words became her anchor. A breakthrough came unexpectedly one afternoon. After weeks of tinkering, Mildred's robot lifted its arm, albeit slowly and awkwardly. The small movement sent a surge of joy through her. She called Susan, voice trembling with excitement. "It moved, Susan. It actually moved." The line was silent for a moment, then Susan replied softly, "That's amazing, Mom." It wasn't the enthusiastic praise Mildred had hoped for, but it was a crack in the wall between them. That evening, Susan visited, tentative but present. They sat together in the garage surrounded by wires and blueprints, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Mildred shared her dreams, her fears, her hope. Susan listened, her eyes glistening with tears. "I'm sorry I didn't believe in you," she said quietly. "I'm proud of you." The moment was fragile but powerful, a bridge slowly rebuilt. Mildred realized this journey was about more than just a robot. It was about reclaiming connections, healing wounds, and proving that age was not an endpoint but a beginning. The small daily changes, the walks, the blog, the garage work, wove together into a tapestry of transformation. The world outside hadn't changed overnight, but Mildred's world had shifted in profound ways. She was no longer waiting for permission to matter. She was creating her own permission, one bold choice at a time. The rhythm of her days now carried a new energy. Neighbors noticed her strides, her smile, the light in her eyes. The local library invited her to speak about her project and her journey. Mildred stood before a small crowd, her voice steady as she shared her story. She saw faces nodding, eyes reflecting hope and recognition. In that moment, she felt seen, not as a relic of the past, but as a beacon for the future. Elon Musk's presence remained a quiet force, a symbol of fearlessness and possibility that propelled her forward without overshadowing her own voice. The Tesla bot was no longer just a news story, it was a catalyst for her own radical reinvention. Mildred's journey was just beginning, but already, it was breaking through the silence that had once threatened to consume her. The one thing she changed, the decision to move, to create, to share, had unlocked a new life she had thought impossible. And as she looked out at the stars one clear night, she whispered to the universe, "I am not done. Not yet." Breaking through wasn't a sudden moment, it was a trembling, powerful wave that rose slowly and then crashed over Mildred, reshaping everything she thought she knew about herself. The night her story went viral started quietly, as so many things do. She had shared a new blog post titled, "The Robot I Built to Prove I'm Not Done," a heartfelt, raw recounting of her journey from loneliness and doubt to renewed purpose and action. The post wasn't polished or perfect, it was honest, filled with small victories and the scars of failure. She expected a handful of readers at best, but within hours, the comments flooded in. Messages poured from across the country, emails, social media shares, calls from strangers who saw their own struggles reflected in her story. Some wrote about losing hope, others shared how Mildred's determination gave them courage to start again. The quiet woman from a small town had suddenly become a voice for a generation often ignored. The surge of attention was overwhelming. Her inbox overflowed with invitations to speak, interviews, and even offers of help with her project. People wanted to see the robot. To touch the symbol of resilience she was building in her garage. It was a validation she hadn't dared hope for. Yet, breaking through wasn't just external, it was deeply personal. After decades of feeling invisible, dismissed, or forgotten, Mildred felt a raw and vulnerable strength coursing through her. She was no longer the shadow fading into the background. She was alive, seen, and relevant. But victory was bittersweet. Not everyone celebrated her rise. Susan was still cautious, protective but wary of the spotlight. Their fragile reconnection was tested by the sudden attention. "Mom, don't let this go to your head," Susan warned gently. "I want you to be safe, not swept up in something you can't control." Mildred understood. The fear of losing her daughter's support was a sharp undercurrent beneath the triumph. Still, she pressed on, fueled by a conviction that her story wasn't just about her, it was about everyone who had ever felt left behind. The robot itself became a beacon of hope. It wasn't the sleek machine Musk's companies built, but it was real, a testament to courage over perfection. She invited a local news crew to her garage, the camera catching the soft glow of the workbench, the hum of motors, the faint scent of solder and oil. As the robot lifted its arm, hesitant but determined, Mildred's voice cracked with emotion. "This is proof that we are never too old to create, to change, to fight for meaning." The footage aired nationally. Viewers connected with her story, a rare portrait of grit and grace in a world obsessed with youth and speed. Letters arrived from other seniors, families, even schools, asking for her to speak or share advice. Mildred's world expanded in ways she never imagined. But breaking through was also about healing. One afternoon, as she sorted through old papers, she found a letter from Henry, written years before he died. It was a simple note, filled with love and encouragement she had never fully seen at the time. Reading it, she wept, not just for what was lost but for what could still be reclaimed. That evening, Susan called again. "Mom, I've been thinking," she said slowly. "Maybe I was wrong to doubt you. Maybe it's time I see what you're doing for myself." Their conversation was the first real connection in years, a fragile thread weaving new trust. Mildred knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but the breakthrough, the moment when hope met action, had changed everything. She realized that the real victory wasn't the attention or the robot, but the courage to show up, to be vulnerable, and to believe in herself again. The night sky outside her window sparkled with stars, each one a reminder that even in the darkest times, light could break through. Mildred whispered to the silence, "This is just the beginning." The new legacy was not a monument or a trophy, it was the quiet, steady realization that Mildred's life had become a beacon, not just for others but for herself. Sitting in her favorite chair by the window, she watched the afternoon sun cast golden light over the garden she had planted years ago but never truly tended until now. The flowers swayed gently, a reminder that growth was always possible, even after long winters of neglect. I thought it was the end, she whispered to the empty room, but it was just a new beginning. Those words echoed in her mind, carrying the weight of all she had endured and all she had yet to do. Her story was no longer just about building a robot or rekindling a lost dream. It was about rewriting the narrative of what it meant to grow old. The legacy she was creating was one of action, courage, and the refusal to accept invisibility. Mildred often reflected on the day she first saw the Tesla bot reveal. The image of Elon Musk speaking fearlessly about the future had ignited a spark in her that refused to dim. His example taught her that limits were often illusions we accept, not truths we must obey. That lesson carried her through the darkest days, when the doubts whispered loudest and the world seemed indifferent. The legacy was also deeply personal. It was the healing of fractured relationships, like the tentative bond she rebuilt with Susan. Over time, the walls of mistrust crumbled, replaced by conversations filled with honesty and love. They began to share more than words, memories, fears, hopes. Susan attended a local tech fair where Mildred showcased her robot prototype. Watching her mother speak with passion and pride, Susan felt a swell of admiration she had long buried. Their story became one of reconciliation and mutual respect, proof that time could heal even the deepest wounds. Mildred's blog grew into a vibrant community, a gathering place for people who refused to be defined by age or circumstance. Readers shared their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs. Together, they forged a network of support and inspiration that crossed states and generations. The movement was quiet but powerful, a grassroots rebellion against the culture of too late. Mildred never sought fame or fortune. What mattered was impact, the small ripples of change that reached hearts and minds. She started mentoring other seniors interested in technology and creativity, hosting workshops in the local library's community room. Watching hesitant hands assemble circuits or write their first lines of code, she felt a profound joy. This was her new legacy, empowerment through connection and possibility. The legacy also meant embracing vulnerability. Mildred learned to share her fears and failures openly, breaking the silence that often shrouded aging in shame and isolation. She spoke at conferences and community events, her voice steady and compelling. "We are not done," she told crowds. "Our stories, our dreams, our contributions matter, now more than ever." Each time she spoke, she felt the invisible chains loosen, the walls between generations lower. She was no longer just an inventor, she was a messenger of hope. Yet, the journey was not without moments of doubt. Some days, the physical toll of aging reminded her of limitations, aches, fatigue, the slower pace of recovery. But she met these challenges with the same persistence that had built her robot. She adapted, paced herself, and leaned on the community she had cultivated. Elon Musk's shadow lingered as a symbol, but Mildred's own light shone brighter. The new legacy was hers, crafted from resilience, courage, and the radical act of refusing to fade away. One evening, Mildred sat on her porch, the sky painted in hues of pink and orange. She held a letter from a young woman who had found inspiration in her story. "You showed me that it's never too late to start," the letter read. "Thank you for being brave." Tears filled Mildred's eyes as she folded the letter gently. This was the legacy she wanted, a ripple effect of courage that transcended age and circumstance. As the stars emerged, Mildred felt a deep peace. The journey had transformed her from a woman haunted by regret into a force of hope and change. She realized that legacy wasn't about grand achievements but the lives touched, the barriers broken, and the courage to begin anew. Whispering to the night, she said, "I was never too old. I was just waiting for permission to matter again." And in that moment, she knew she had given herself that permission. Mildred's mornings began to carry a new rhythm, one shaped by purpose and discovery rather than routine and resignation. The sun's first light would filter through the curtains, gently waking her as she prepared for the day ahead. No longer was she waiting for a moment that might never come, she was creating moments, crafting days filled with meaning. The workshop in her garage had grown into a sanctuary of creativity. Tools and parts were no longer just objects, they were symbols of a future she was building. The hum of the soldering iron and the soft clink of metal became a soundtrack of transformation. Mildred's hands, once stiff with age and doubt, moved with renewed confidence. Each new circuit, each mechanical joint, was a testament to resilience and the refusal to be defined by the years behind her. The community that had blossomed around her blog now gathered in person, bringing energy and ideas into the once lonely space. They called themselves The Spark, a nod to that elusive ignition point where hope turns to action. Younger and older, dreamers and doers, they formed an unlikely but powerful family united by the belief that change was always possible. Mildred found herself mentoring a retired engineer named George, who had spent decades feeling forgotten after his company downsized. Together, they worked on refining the robot's design, blending experience with fresh innovation. George often marveled at Mildred's tenacity. "You've got the spirit of a startup founder," he told her one afternoon, his eyes twinkling. But with a lifetime of wisdom. Their collaboration brought breakthroughs. The robot gained smoother movements, new sensors, and a rudimentary voice system. It wasn't just a machine, it was a symbol of what could happen when fear was replaced with curiosity and courage. But not all days were victories. There were setbacks, failed prototypes, moments when Mildred's body demanded rest she didn't want to take. The aches and pains reminded her that the fight was not without cost. Yet, each challenge deepened her resolve. "Every failure is a step forward," she would say, repeating the mantra she had adopted from Musk. Mildred's relationship with Susan continued to evolve. The initial distance gave way to understanding and mutual respect. Susan began to appreciate not just her mother's project but the woman behind it, a woman who had quietly fought battles her daughter hadn't seen. One evening, after a long day in the workshop, Susan surprised Mildred with a homemade dinner. They sat at the kitchen table, the air filled with the aroma of roasted vegetables and the soft hum of conversation. For the first time in years, the silence between them felt comfortable. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Susan said, her voice soft but firm. "You've shown me what courage looks like." Those words settled in Mildred's heart like sunlight breaking through clouds. They were a balm for old wounds and a promise of new beginnings. Mildred also found herself invited to speak at community centers and local schools. Her story resonated not just with seniors but with young people grappling with fear and uncertainty about their futures. She spoke about the power of persistence, the importance of dreaming beyond limitations, and the value of intergenerational connection. Each talk left her invigorated, fueled by the energy of hope shared between speaker and listener. The robot project took on new dimensions. Inspired by conversations with community members, Mildred began designing the robot to assist with everyday tasks for seniors, reminding them to take medication, helping with small chores, offering companionship. It wasn't just about technology, it was about dignity and connection. One afternoon, Mildred and George demoed the robot at a senior center. The room filled with laughter and awe as the machine responded to simple commands, moving with a quirky charm that endeared it to everyone present. "This is amazing," one woman said, tears glistening. "You're giving us a friend." That moment crystallized Mildred's vision. Her work wasn't just personal, it was part of a larger mission to redefine aging itself. Elon Musk's influence remained a quiet undercurrent in her journey. His fearless pursuit of the impossible was a constant reminder that boundaries were meant to be pushed. Yet Mildred's path was uniquely her own, shaped by a lifetime of experiences, losses, and triumphs. Her story wasn't about rockets or electric cars but about the human spirit's capacity to adapt, to grow, and to inspire. The days grew warmer, and with them, Mildred's world expanded. She planned to visit a tech conference in a nearby city, where she would present her project to a broader audience. The prospect was both thrilling and terrifying. But fear no longer held her captive, it was a signpost pointing toward growth. The night before her trip, Mildred sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. The same stars that had witnessed her quiet struggles now watched over her bold dreams. She whispered, "This is just the beginning." And in that moment, the past and future converged in a perfect spark of hope. The conference hall buzzed with energy, hundreds of people gathered to witness the latest in technology, innovation, and ideas that promised to shape the future. Mildred, standing at the edge of the crowd, felt a surge of nervous excitement. The bright lights, the sea of unfamiliar faces, the hum of conversation, it was a world far from her quiet garage and small town, yet she belonged here now. Clutching her notes and the small remote control for her presentation, she took a deep breath and reminded herself of why she had come. She was not just there to showcase a robot, she was there to shatter stereotypes about aging and to inspire others to believe in second chances. The moment her name was called, Mildred stepped onto the stage, the spotlight warm against her skin. The microphone crackled slightly as she adjusted it, and then she began. "Good afternoon. I'm Mildred Evans, and I'm here to tell you that age is not a limitation, it's a starting point." Her voice, though steady, carried the tremor of vulnerability, a raw honesty that captivated the audience from the first word. She shared her story, of loneliness, regret, and the moment Elon Musk's vision sparked a fire within her. She spoke about the robot she had built, not as a feat of engineering perfection, but as a symbol of persistence and hope. Images flashed on the screen behind her, the cluttered garage workshop, the first clumsy movements of the robot, the community that had grown around her blog. Faces from across the country, stories of struggle and renewal, connected by a shared determination to defy the odds. Questions followed her presentation, curious, respectful, and often deeply personal. A young woman asked how she found the courage to start at an age when most people slow down. Mildred smiled, thinking of Musk's relentless drive. "It's never too late to begin. Fear will always be there, but you don't have to let it win." A man in the audience spoke about his father, who had given up on his passions after retirement. Mildred urged him to help his father find a spark, just as she had found hers. The day was a whirlwind of conversations, connections, and unexpected moments of inspiration. A tech company approached her with an offer to collaborate on refining her robot for broader use in elder care. It was an opportunity she hadn't dreamed of but embraced with cautious optimism. That evening, as she rested in her hotel room, Mildred reflected on the day. The city lights outside twinkled like the stars she so often admired from her porch. She felt a profound gratitude for the journey, from isolation to community, from doubt to purpose. Yet, she also knew the path ahead would demand resilience and adaptation. Back home, Susan was waiting. Their reunion was tender, filled with stories and laughter. Susan admitted she was proud in a way she hadn't expressed before, and Mildred felt the healing thread between them strengthen. The robot project accelerated with new resources and expertise. Mildred and George worked tirelessly, refining the design, integrating feedback from seniors who tested early prototypes. The robot gained the ability to detect falls, remind users of appointments, and even engage in simple conversations. It became more than a machine. It was a companion, a helper, a bridge across the isolation many elders faced. But success brought new challenges. The media spotlight intensified, and with it came scrutiny and skepticism. Some critics dismissed her work as a novelty, others questioned the feasibility of technology for seniors. The pressure threatened to overwhelm, but Mildred stood firm, grounded in the knowledge that every breakthrough was hard-won. She leaned on her community, their shared belief a fortress against doubt. One afternoon, during a demonstration at a local senior center, Mildred witnessed something that crystallized the heart of her mission. An elderly man, hesitant at first, interacted with the robot. As it responded to his questions and offered reminders, a smile broke across his face, a smile that spoke of connection, dignity, and renewed hope. Watching him, Mildred realized her legacy wasn't just about invention but about restoring humanity in the face of aging. The journey had transformed her. From a woman shadowed by regret and fear, she had become a leader, a creator, and an inspiration. She often thought back to Musk's words about persistence and risk, but now she understood that her courage was born not just from emulation but from the deep well of her own experience. Late one night, as the city quieted, Mildred sat by her window, the robot resting nearby, silent but full of promise. She whispered to the darkness, "This is only the beginning." And in the stillness, she felt the future unfolding, limitless, bright, and waiting. Mildred's world continued to expand in ways she hadn't imagined possible. The robot, once a simple project born from a spark of defiance against age, was evolving into something far greater, a symbol of hope, resilience, and connection. Each day brought new challenges, but also new triumphs. The collaboration with the tech company introduced Mildred to a team of engineers and designers eager to bring her vision to life on a larger scale. Together, they refined the robot's capabilities, focusing on user-friendliness and empathy. They programmed it to recognize emotions, respond gently, and offer encouragement. The robot wasn't just a tool, it was becoming a companion. Mildred spent long hours in the lab, sometimes late into the night, guiding the development with her unique perspective as both creator and end user. Her voice carried the wisdom of someone who understood the fears and hopes of aging intimately. The team grew to respect her deeply, not just for her technical insights but for the courage she embodied. "You've changed how we think about innovation," one engineer told her. "It's not just about technology, it's about heart." The community she had nurtured online and offline blossomed. The spark became a movement, with seniors across the country sharing stories of reinvention and courage. Workshops, meetups, and virtual forums connected people eager to rewrite their own narratives. Mildred's blog transformed into a platform for empowerment, featuring guest stories, advice, and celebrations of small victories. Yet, even as momentum built, Mildred faced moments of doubt and vulnerability. There were days when her body ached, when the weight of expectations pressed down, and when old fears whispered that she was out of place. But each time, she found strength in the connections she had forged and in the vision that had carried her this far. Susan remained a steadfast presence, their relationship deepening through shared experiences and mutual respect. She often accompanied Mildred to events and workshops, proud of the woman her mother had become. Together, they navigated the complexities of family, healing wounds, and building bridges. One crisp autumn afternoon, Mildred received an invitation to speak at a national summit on aging and technology. It was the culmination of her journey, a chance to share her story and her vision with leaders, innovators, and policymakers. Standing before the audience, Mildred spoke with passion and clarity. She told them about the loneliness that so many elders face, the invisibility society imposes, and the radical possibility of change. "We are not relics of the past," she said. "We are creators of the future." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring new initiatives and partnerships aimed at improving elder care through technology and community. After the summit, Mildred was approached by a young woman named Emma, a researcher working on robotics and human interaction. Emma was fascinated by Mildred's work and invited her to collaborate on a study exploring how robots could enhance quality of life for seniors. The partnership brought fresh energy and ideas, blending research with lived experience. Together, they developed prototypes that could learn from users' habits and preferences, creating personalized assistants that felt natural and supportive. Mildred found joy in this new phase of innovation, her spirit energized by the blend of science and compassion. The robot project, once a solitary dream, had become a collaborative journey spanning generations and disciplines. Yet, amidst the progress, Mildred never lost sight of the personal transformation at the heart of her story. She often reflected on the moment Elon Musk's vision sparked her own fire, the realization that limitations were often self-imposed, and that courage was the key to breaking through. That spark had ignited a blaze that warmed not only her life but the lives of many others. One evening, as Mildred and Susan sat together watching the sunset, Mildred shared her thoughts. "I used to think my story was about endings," she said softly. "But it's really about beginnings. Every day is a chance to start again, to build something new." Susan nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. You've taught me that it's never too late to change, to heal, to dream. Their bond was a testament to the power of hope and forgiveness. Mildred's legacy was unfolding not just in technology or public recognition but in the quiet moments of connection, growth, and love. The robot continued to evolve, touching more lives with its gentle presence. It became a companion for seniors living alone, a helper for those with mobility challenges, and a symbol of dignity and possibility. Mildred's journey from doubt to hope had become a blueprint for others, a reminder that age was not a cage but a frontier. In the twilight of her life, Mildred found a profound peace. She had transformed her regrets into purpose, her fears into action, and her isolation into community. The woman who once felt invisible had become a beacon. As she looked out over her garden, the flowers blooming with vibrant color, she whispered, "This is the life I was meant to live." And in that moment, surrounded by the fruits of her labor and love, Mildred knew that her story, like the robot she built, was only just beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Mildred's life was no longer defined by the past she once mourned but by the present she was fiercely creating. The robot project had become a beacon of hope for countless seniors, a tangible reminder that technology could be a bridge rather than a barrier. Every day brought new emails, messages, and stories from people who found inspiration in her journey and the machine she built. One morning, as the autumn light spilled softly through the kitchen window, Mildred received a call that would change everything. It was from a major national television network, inviting her to share her story on a popular morning show. The invitation was thrilling but also intimidating. The idea of stepping into the spotlight, speaking live to millions, stirred a familiar anxiety. Yet, Mildred remembered Elon Musk's fearless approach to the unknown, the way he embraced risk as a path to innovation. This is my moment, she thought, my chance to light a spark for others. The day of the interview arrived with a swirl of nerves and excitement. The studio was a flurry of activity, cameras, lights, producers, and hosts all moving with practiced precision. Mildred was greeted warmly but knew the pressure was real. Sitting in the makeup chair, she took deep breaths, grounding herself in the journey that had brought her here. When the cameras rolled, she spoke with a heartfelt authenticity that resonated deeply. She shared the loneliness she once felt, the despair that almost silenced her dreams, and the moment Elon Musk's vision reignited her hope. The hosts listened intently, their questions respectful and encouraging. Mildred described the robot not just as a machine but as a companion designed to restore dignity and independence. "We are rewriting what it means to grow old," she said. The interview aired to millions, sparking a wave of responses. Messages poured in, thank you notes, stories of renewal, offers of support. The spotlight was intense but welcomed. For Mildred, the true victory was the ripple effect, seeing others find courage to pursue their own dreams, no matter their age. The days following the interview were a whirlwind. Mildred was invited to speak at conferences, participate in podcasts, and collaborate with organizations focused on elder care and technology. Each opportunity deepened her commitment to her mission. The robot continued to evolve, now equipped with more advanced features like voice recognition and personalized reminders. Mildred's team worked tirelessly, driven by the belief that technology could transform lives. Yet, amid the success, Mildred remained grounded. She continued her morning walks, finding solace in the rhythm of her steps and the beauty of the changing seasons. Nature was a reminder that growth was ongoing, that every ending birthed a new beginning. One afternoon, during a community workshop, Mildred met Jack, a retired schoolteacher with a passion for storytelling. Jack shared how, after retirement, he had struggled with purpose and connection. Inspired by Mildred's story, he had started writing again, discovering a new voice and audience online. They quickly bonded, their friendship a source of mutual encouragement. Jack's stories began to feature themes of aging with dignity and hope, resonating with readers far and wide. Together, they envisioned a project combining technology and storytelling, using the robot's interactive capabilities to share stories that uplifted and connected seniors. This new venture felt like the next frontier in Mildred's journey. As winter settled in, Mildred found herself reflecting on the transformation she had undergone. The fears that once held her captive had been replaced by a fierce determination to live fully and authentically. The regrets of her past had become fuel for her future. Elon Musk's example remained a quiet guide, his relentless pursuit of innovation reminding her that boldness was a form of kindness to oneself. One evening, as snowflakes drifted gently outside her window, Mildred received a letter from a young woman named Claire. Claire shared how Mildred's story had inspired her to pursue a career in robotics, despite doubts from her family and friends. "You showed me that courage doesn't have an age," Claire wrote. "Thank you for lighting the way." Tears filled Mildred's eyes as she folded the letter carefully. Moments like these were the true legacy she sought, the ripple effect of hope and empowerment across generations. The journey was far from over. Mildred knew there would be challenges ahead, but she faced them with the strength of someone who had found her voice and purpose late but fiercely. The robot, the community, the stories, they were all threads in the tapestry of a life transformed. As the year came to a close, Mildred stood in her garden, the snow softening the edges of the world. She looked up at the sky, stars twinkling like distant fires. Whispering to herself, she said, "I was never too old. I was just waiting for permission to matter again." And with that, she stepped forward into whatever came next, her heart full and her spirit unbreakable. The new year dawned crisp and bright, carrying with it a sense of possibility that wrapped around Mildred like a warm embrace. The momentum of the past months propelled her forward, but she also sensed the weight of responsibility growing heavier. The robot project was no longer just a personal mission, it had become a movement, a beacon for many grappling with the daunting shadows of aging. Mildred felt both exhilarated and cautious. She understood that innovation carried risks, not just technical but emotional. The stakes were high, and every decision reverberated beyond her garage and town. One chilly morning, as she prepared for a visit to a rehabilitation center, Mildred reflected on how far she had come. The center had invited her to demonstrate the robot's capabilities to patients recovering from strokes and injuries, many of whom faced physical and cognitive challenges. It was a critical test of whether technology could truly assist in healing and daily living. Arriving at the center, Mildred was greeted by a small group of patients and caregivers. The room was bright, filled with the quiet hum of medical equipment and hopeful energy. She set up the robot carefully, explaining its features and inviting questions. One man, Henry, a former carpenter in his 70s, sat quietly observing. His movements were slow and deliberate, and Mildred sensed a deep well of frustration beneath his calm exterior. When the robot gently reminded him to do his prescribed exercises, Henry hesitated but then followed the prompts. Over the next hour, Mildred watched as the robot engaged patients with warmth and patience, offering reminders, encouragement, and even light conversation. Tears welled in her eyes as she saw the flicker of independence returning to faces worn by illness and time. After the demonstration, a caregiver approached Mildred, her eyes shining. "You've given us more than a machine," she said. "You've given hope." Those words echoed in Mildred's mind as she traveled home. The impact of her work was real, tangible, and deeply moving. But with growth came complexity. The tech company funding the project began to push for faster commercialization and larger-scale deployment. They wanted a market-ready product within months, placing pressure on Mildred and her team. Balancing innovation with quality and empathy became a delicate dance. Mildred advocated fiercely for thorough testing and user feedback, determined not to sacrifice the heart of the project. Meanwhile, her relationship with Susan faced new tests. The demands of the project and public attention strained their time together. They argued over priorities, misunderstandings creeping in where love and concern mingled. Yet beneath the tension was a bond that neither wanted to break. Mildred reminded herself of the importance of patience and communication, lessons learned from years of healing old wounds. One evening, after a difficult conversation, Susan surprised Mildred with a simple gesture, a framed photo of them both smiling during a community event. "We're stronger than this," Susan said softly. "I'm proud of you, Mom." The words were a balm, a promise to weather storms together. On a personal level, Mildred continued to nurture the Spark community. Virtual meetings connected members from distant states, sharing stories, challenges, and victories. Mildred's blog became a hub of inspiration and resources, with guest writers contributing their voices. The movement grew beyond technology, encompassing art, music, and wellness as pathways to reclaiming life's joy. One afternoon, Mildred received an invitation from a university to guest lecture on aging, technology, and social impact. It was an opportunity to engage with young minds and inspire a new generation of innovators. Standing in a packed auditorium, Mildred spoke candidly about her journey, the fears, failures, and fierce hope that propelled her forward. The students listened, rapt, many taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. After the lecture, a young woman approached, introducing herself as a robotics student passionate about elder care. "Your story changed how I think about what's possible," she said. "Thank you for opening the door." Mildred smiled, the circle of inspiration widening. Yet, as spring approached, a new challenge emerged. The robot's software began showing glitches during trials, causing frustration among users and staff. Mildred and her team worked tirelessly to diagnose and fix the issues, but the pressure mounted. Negative feedback threatened to overshadow the progress made. At a critical meeting with the tech company's executives, Mildred stood her ground, insisting on prioritizing quality over speed. She argued that trust and empathy were non-negotiable. The tension was palpable, but eventually, the company agreed to extend the timeline. Mildred breathed a sigh of relief but knew the road ahead remained steep. In quieter moments, Mildred found solace in simple pleasures, morning walks, tending her garden, reading letters from community members who found strength in her story. She reminded herself that transformation was a process, filled with peaks and valleys. One evening, as she watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Mildred whispered a promise to herself, to keep pushing, keep dreaming, and keep lighting the way for others who felt lost. The journey was far from over, but she was ready. With the spirit of Elon Musk's relentless innovation in her heart and the love of her community surrounding her, Mildred stepped boldly into the next chapter of her extraordinary life. Spring unfurled its colors slowly but surely, bathing Mildred's town in fresh light and renewed energy. The garden outside her window blossomed with tulips and daffodils, a quiet testament to the power of patient growth and transformation. Mildred found herself waking earlier, greeted by the soft chirping of birds and the promise of new beginnings. The robot project had settled into a rhythm, its rough edges smoothed by relentless iteration and community feedback. The glitches that once threatened to unravel months of progress were replaced by steady, reliable performance. Mildred's confidence grew with each success, yet she remained humble, aware that technology was only part of the journey. The heart of the work lay in the connections forged between people, between the elders who embraced the robot as a companion and the caregivers who found new tools to support dignity and independence. One morning, Mildred received an unexpected invitation from a prestigious technology conference in Silicon Valley. The organizers wanted her to present not only the robot but also the story behind it, the human struggle, the emotional landscape of aging, and the radical idea that courage and creativity know no age limits. Mildred hesitated. The tech world was intimidating, a fast-moving arena where she often felt out of place among younger, more polished innovators. But then she thought of Elon Musk, who had transformed industries by refusing to accept limitations. "I can do this," she told herself. "This is part of my mission." Arriving in Silicon Valley was like stepping into another universe. Towering glass buildings shimmered under the California sun, and the air buzzed with a restless energy that was both exhilarating and overwhelming. Mildred navigated the conference center with a mixture of awe and determination. The event was packed with presentations on artificial intelligence, space exploration, sustainable energy, and cutting-edge robotics. When her turn came, she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight warm but familiar. She began by sharing her story, the loneliness of aging, the spark that Elon Musk's vision ignited, and the birth of a robot designed to restore hope and connection. Her voice carried the authenticity of lived experience, drawing the audience into a world rarely seen in tech circles. She demonstrated the robot's capabilities, its gentle voice and intuitive responses. She introduced Henry, the former carpenter from the rehabilitation center, via video call, showing how the robot had helped him regain confidence and autonomy. The room was silent, captivated. Afterwards, a wave of applause swept through the hall. Questions followed, some technical, others deeply personal. A young engineer asked how Mildred managed fear and self-doubt. She answered simply, "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to act despite it." Her words resonated beyond the room, sparking conversations that lingered long after the conference ended. Mildred's presence at Silicon Valley opened new doors. Venture capitalists, nonprofits, and tech leaders approached her with offers of partnership and funding. Some proposals were tempting but risked diluting her vision or prioritizing profit over purpose. Mildred navigated these waters with care, guided by the values that had carried her this far. She was determined that the robot remain a tool for empowerment, not exploitation. Back home, the Spark community flourished. New members shared their stories of transformation, inspired by Mildred's example. Workshops expanded to include art therapy, digital literacy, and intergenerational mentorship. The movement became a mosaic of hope, creativity, and resilience. Mildred found joy in these connections, often joining virtual sessions and encouraging members personally. Susan continued to be a pillar of support, their relationship growing stronger through shared challenges and triumphs. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Susan confided her own fears about aging and relevance. Mildred listened with empathy, reminding her that transformation was a shared journey. "We're writing new stories together," Mildred said softly. "And there's always room to grow." The robot's impact deepened with each passing month. Stories poured in of seniors rediscovering independence, caregivers finding relief, and families bridging generational gaps. Mildred compiled these narratives into a book proposal, hoping to reach even more people with messages of hope and possibility. Writing became a new creative outlet, allowing her to reflect and share lessons learned. Yet, even in moments of success, Mildred remained mindful of the fragility of progress. The aging process brought physical challenges, stiff joints, fatigue, that she managed with determination and care. She balanced innovation with self-compassion, knowing that sustainability meant honoring her body and spirit. One afternoon, Mildred received a message that shook her. Henry, the man whose recovery had inspired so many, had suffered a setback. His health had declined suddenly, and he was hospitalized. Mildred rushed to his side, feeling the weight of fear and helplessness she hadn't known she still carried. Sitting beside him, she held his hand and whispered words of encouragement. The robot she had designed to aid his recovery sat quietly nearby, a silent witness to their bond. Over the next weeks, Henry's condition stabilized, and with gentle care and support, he began to improve again. The experience deepened Mildred's resolve to continue her work, not just as a technical project but as a mission of compassion and connection. It was a reminder that technology alone was not enough, it needed to be woven into the fabric of human relationships. The seasons changed, and with them, Mildred's vision expanded. She dreamed of community centers where robots and humans collaborated to create environments rich in support and dignity. She imagined intergenerational programs where young people and elders learned from each other, breaking down barriers of age and isolation. Her dreams were bold but grounded in the reality she knew intimately. One evening, as she watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky, Mildred felt a deep sense of peace. The journey from despair to hope, from invisibility to impact, had transformed her life beyond measure. She whispered a quiet thanks to the spark that had ignited it all, the fearless example of a man who dared to dream beyond limits. "This is only the beginning," she thought, smiling. And with that, Mildred stepped forward into the unfolding future, ready to light the way for others still searching for their own spark. Summer arrived with a gentle warmth that seeped into every corner of Mildred's life. The garden outside her window was lush and fragrant, humming with bees and the songs of birds. The air carried the scent of freshly cut grass and distant barbecues, a symphony of small-town life that had become a backdrop to her extraordinary journey. Mildred's robot project had grown beyond the prototype stage, now actively deployed in assisted living facilities and homes across the region. Each installation was a story of transformation, of loneliness softened, of independence regained, of connections renewed. Yet with expansion came complexity. Mildred found herself navigating the tangled web of organizational politics, regulatory hurdles, and the persistent challenge of balancing empathy with efficiency. The tech company partners pushed for rapid growth, driven by profit margins and market share, while Mildred held fast to her vision of dignity and care. It was a difficult tightrope walk. One morning, as she reviewed reports in her sunlit kitchen, Mildred's phone buzzed with a message from Susan. "Can we talk? It's important." The urgency in the text sent a ripple through Mildred's calm exterior. When Susan arrived, her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. She spoke of feeling overwhelmed, caught between supporting Mildred's mission and managing her own health struggles. The conversation was raw and honest, a reminder that even those closest to the journey bore their own burdens. They talked long into the afternoon, sharing fears, hopes, and the unspoken love that bound them. It was a moment of renewal, a pledge to face the future together, no matter the challenges. That same week, Mildred received an invitation to participate in a documentary about aging and technology. The filmmakers wanted to capture her story and the impact of the robot project on real lives. Mildred agreed, sensing the power of storytelling to reach hearts beyond her immediate circle. Filming took place over several weeks, weaving together interviews, community events, and candid moments of triumph and struggle. Mildred found herself reflecting deeply, sometimes with tears, as she revisited the path that had brought her here. The documentary team captured her imperfections and resilience, painting a portrait of a woman reclaiming purpose and passion at a time when society often whispers, "Too late." One afternoon, during filming at a local community center, Mildred met Marjorie, an 82-year-old artist who had recently lost her husband. Marjorie was fiercely independent but carried a deep sadness that dimmed her vibrant spirit. As they talked, Mildred shared how the robot had helped her rediscover hope and connection. Marjorie listened, eyes brightening with curiosity. They began meeting regularly, sharing art, stories, and laughter. Marjorie's paintings blossomed with new energy, reflecting a spirit reborn. Their friendship was a testament to the transformative power of connection, technology, and shared courage. Meanwhile, Mildred's work caught the attention of a national advocacy group focused on elder rights. They invited her to join their advisory board, recognizing the importance of her insights and lived experience. The role opened new avenues for influence, allowing Mildred to speak out on policy issues and funding for elder care innovation. The responsibility was daunting but invigorating. She felt the weight of representing a community often overlooked but also the thrill of pushing for change on a larger scale. The summer months brought travel as well. Mildred and Susan attended conferences, visited pilot sites, and connected with families touched by the robot's presence. Each encounter deepened Mildred's understanding of the diverse challenges elders faced and the myriad ways technology could help, not as a replacement for human touch but as an enhancer of dignity and independence. One evening, back home after a long day, Mildred sat on her porch, watching fireflies flicker in the dark. She thought about Elon Musk's philosophy. The boldness to dream big, the willingness to fail, the relentless pursuit of progress despite setbacks. She realized that her own journey echoed those themes in a deeply personal way. Courage, she knew, was not reserved for the young or the famous. It lived in everyday choices, choosing hope over despair, action over inertia, connection over isolation. As the stars wheeled overhead, Mildred felt a quiet satisfaction. The robot was more than a project, it was a movement rooted in love, resilience, and the refusal to be defined by age. In her heart, she carried the stories of those who had found new purpose, new joy, and new life. The summer stretched on, full of promise and possibility. Mildred knew there would be more challenges ahead, more glitches to fix, more hearts to heal, more boundaries to push. But she was ready, fueled by a lifetime of experience and a newfound fire that no number could extinguish. "We're just getting started," she whispered to the night. And with that, she turned inside, ready to greet whatever came next with open arms and an unbreakable spirit. Autumn's golden hues painted the town in warmth and nostalgia as Mildred moved deeper into her journey. The crisp air carried the scent of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke, reminders of the passing seasons and the cycles of change she had come to embrace. The robot project was no longer just hers, it had grown into a shared vision among many, engineers, caregivers, seniors, and families, all united by a common goal, reclaiming dignity and purpose in later life. Mildred found herself increasingly involved in mentoring younger innovators, offering guidance not just on technology but on the human side of innovation. She believed that empathy and lived experience were as vital as code and circuits. One afternoon, while preparing for a workshop at a nearby community college, Mildred received a call that unsettled her. Henry, the former carpenter whose recovery had been a beacon of hope, was experiencing severe cognitive decline. The news hit her like a wave, stirring a mix of sorrow and determination. She resolved to visit him, to bring whatever comfort and support she could. At the nursing home, Henry looked frail but his eyes still held sparks of the man she knew. They sat together quietly, Mildred holding his hand as memories flickered in and out. The robot sat nearby, its presence a gentle reminder of progress and compassion. Mildred shared stories of their journey, hoping to reach him in whatever way she could. The visit deepened her commitment to integrating technology with humanity, knowing that no device could replace the warmth of a caring hand or the power of shared memory. Back home, Mildred's relationship with Susan continued to evolve. They navigated the complexities of aging together, health scares, moments of doubt, but also laughter and quiet joy. Their love, forged through years of challenges, was a steady anchor amid the shifting tides. Susan became an active participant in the project, volunteering at community events and offering insights that enriched the robot's development. Their partnership embodied the very spirit of collaboration and resilience Mildred championed. In the tech world, Mildred's influence grew. Invitations to speak at conferences and participate in panels came frequently, each opportunity a chance to amplify the voices of elders and advocate for inclusive innovation. She challenged the industry's obsession with youth and speed, insisting that patience and respect for lived experience were essential ingredients for meaningful progress. The robot itself underwent continuous refinement. Feedback from users revealed new possibilities: adaptive learning, personalized interaction, and integration with smart home systems. Mildred worked closely with engineers to ensure the robot remained intuitive and compassionate, a true companion rather than a cold machine. One evening, as she reviewed data from recent trials, Mildred felt a profound sense of gratitude. The road had been long and fraught with doubt, but the impact was undeniable. She thought of the countless lives touched, the barriers broken, and the dreams rekindled. The movement she had sparked was thriving, fueled by the belief that aging was not an end but a new beginning. That belief was tested when a respected elder rights organization invited Mildred to Washington, D.C., to testify before a congressional committee on elder care and technology. The experience was daunting, speaking to lawmakers who held the power to shape policy and funding priorities. Yet Mildred's voice was steady and passionate. She shared stories of struggle and hope, of the transformative potential of technology when guided by empathy. Her testimony struck a chord, leading to increased attention on funding for elder care innovation. Returning home, Mildred felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight for dignity and inclusion was far from over, but progress was real and achievable. In quieter moments, she found joy in simple rituals: morning tea on the porch, handwritten letters from community members, and long walks with Susan through the changing landscape. Each day was a gift, a chance to learn, to connect, and to create. As autumn deepened, Mildred received an unexpected letter from Elon Musk himself. He praised her courage and vision, acknowledging the power of her work to challenge societal limits and inspire transformation. His words were a beacon, a reminder that radical thinking and compassion could go hand in hand. Mildred shared the letter with her community, a symbol of the bridge between generations and disciplines. It fueled their collective spirit, a testament to what was possible when fear was set aside and hearts were open. The season closed with a community gathering, a celebration of stories, achievements, and the unbreakable human spirit. Mildred stood before the crowd, her voice clear and full of emotion. "We are more than our years," she said. "We are the keepers of wisdom, the builders of dreams, the architects of new beginnings. Age is not a cage, it is a canvas. And together, we paint a future filled with hope." The applause that followed was thunderous, a chorus of affirmation and shared resolve. As the last leaves drifted to the ground, Mildred felt a deep peace. The journey was ongoing, but the path was illuminated by connection, courage, and the relentless pursuit of meaning. She looked to the horizon with open eyes and an open heart, ready to meet whatever came next. Winter crept in quietly, blanketing the town in soft snow and stillness that contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of activity in Mildred's life. The days grew shorter, and with them, the rhythm of work shifted inward, toward reflection and planning. The robot project had reached a milestone, successful deployments in over a dozen care centers, countless stories of regained independence and rekindled hope. Yet Mildred sensed this was just the beginning, the foundation for something far greater. The cold months brought new challenges. Supply chain disruptions delayed critical parts, funding cycles tightened, and whispers of skepticism surfaced among some caregivers wary of relying too heavily on technology. Mildred faced these obstacles with the same quiet determination that had fueled her since the start. She believed deeply in the human spirit's capacity to adapt and grow, even when the world seemed to resist change. One afternoon, Mildred received a letter from a young woman named Emily, the granddaughter of a robot user. Emily wrote about how the robot had transformed her grandmother's life, allowing her to live independently and with dignity longer than anyone expected. The letter was filled with gratitude but also a plea, to continue innovating, to make sure no elder felt forgotten or discarded. Mildred was moved to tears. The letter crystallized the meaning behind the work, reminding her that each small victory was part of a larger tapestry woven from countless lives. Energized, Mildred began sketching ideas for the next generation of the robot, more intuitive, more adaptive, designed not just for assistance but for companionship. She envisioned a machine that could recognize emotions, respond with empathy, and even share memories and stories. It was an ambitious leap, but one she was determined to pursue. Meanwhile, the documentary about Mildred's journey aired nationally, touching viewers across the country. Calls and messages flooded in from elders and caregivers eager to learn more and get involved. The response was overwhelming, affirming the universal resonance of the story. Among the messages was one from a technology company offering a partnership to scale production. They promised resources and expertise but also sought influence over the project's direction. Mildred carefully weighed the offer, mindful of the delicate balance between growth and mission integrity. She consulted Susan and trusted advisors, ultimately deciding to accept, but with clear boundaries to protect the project's heart. The decision was a turning point, opening new doors but also demanding vigilance and leadership. In the quiet moments between meetings and development sessions, Mildred nurtured her personal connections. She visited Henry again, witnessing the slow but steady progress he made in memory care. The robot's presence in his room had become a comforting constant, bridging gaps between past and present. Mildred also spent time with Marjorie, the artist whose friendship had blossomed into a source of joy and inspiration. They painted together, their canvases vibrant with the colors of resilience and renewal. One evening, Susan and Mildred hosted a gathering for the Spark community, friends, collaborators, and supporters who had become an extended family. The room buzzed with conversation, laughter, and stories of transformation. Mildred stood and shared a moment of gratitude, her voice thick with emotion. "We started with a spark," she said. "And look at the blaze we've built together. This is more than technology, it's love in action." The applause was warm and heartfelt, a testament to the power of shared vision and collective effort. As winter deepened, Mildred turned inward to her writing, crafting chapters for the book she hoped would inspire others to embrace change and courage. Her words flowed with honesty and hope, weaving her story with those she had met along the way. Writing became a sacred act, a way to process pain and joy, fear and triumph. One night, while working late, Mildred paused to gaze out at the snow-covered landscape. The stillness reminded her that rest was as vital as action. She realized that transformation was not just about doing but also about being, finding peace within the storms of life. That insight renewed her commitment to balance and self-care, even as the work pressed forward. Unexpectedly, a message arrived from Elon Musk himself, responding to her recent updates. He encouraged her to keep pushing boundaries and reminded her that innovation was a relentless journey of learning and adapting. His words were brief but powerful, a reminder that even the most visionary leaders valued persistence and heart. Mildred shared the message with her team, a rallying cry that lifted spirits and strengthened resolve. As the year drew to a close, Mildred found herself surrounded by the warmth of community and the quiet pride of hard-won progress. The robot was no longer a mere invention, it was a movement challenging assumptions about aging, technology, and human potential. She knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she faced it with a fearless heart. "We are rewriting what it means to grow older," she whispered. "And this story is just beginning." The new year dawned with a crisp promise, sunlight spilling through frosted windows and casting long shadows across Mildred's workspace. The quiet hum of the heater mingled with the soft tapping of her keyboard as she poured herself into refining the next iteration of the robot. Every line of code, every mechanical tweak was infused with purpose, an act of defiance against the whispering doubts that had once told her she was too old, too late, too invisible. The challenges were greater now. Scaling production meant dealing with factories, supply chains, and the relentless pace of deadlines. She attended meetings where jargon flew like a foreign language, where youthful engineers spoke fast and with certainty. Mildred listened, learned, and spoke with a voice steady from decades of living through storms. She reminded everyone that this wasn't just a project, but a mission to restore dignity to the forgotten. The team began experimenting with emotional recognition software, integrating sensors that could detect subtle changes in facial expression and voice tone. The goal was ambitious, a robot not just smart, but empathetic, capable of responding to loneliness, frustration, or joy. On a chilly afternoon, Mildred tested the prototype with Marjorie, the artist and dear friend. As Marjorie painted, the robot noticed a sudden sigh and offered a gentle, "Would you like to talk about what's on your mind?" Marjorie smiled, touched by the machine's sensitivity. It was a small but profound step toward bridging the gap between human warmth and digital assistance. Word of their progress spread, drawing attention from universities and research institutions. Mildred was invited to collaborate on studies exploring technology's role in combating social isolation among elders. These partnerships brought fresh energy and new perspectives, weaving a rich tapestry of innovation grounded in compassion. Amid the breakthroughs, Mildred remained grounded by her daily rituals. Morning walks with Susan through frost-kissed fields, quiet breakfasts filled with laughter and shared memories, and evenings spent reading letters from community members who found hope in the Spark movement. One letter stood out, a note from a woman named Gloria, who wrote about her father's transformation after receiving a robot. Gloria's words spoke of reclaimed dignity and rekindled family bonds. "Your work gave my father a voice again," she wrote. "Thank you for proving that we never lose our capacity to matter." Mildred folded the letter carefully, a quiet tear tracing her cheek. It was moments like these that fueled her relentless drive. Yet, the journey was not without setbacks. Funding cycles tightened as economic shifts rattled investors, and some facilities faced pushback from staff resistant to integrating robots into care routines. Mildred approached these challenges with patience and openness, organizing training sessions and community forums to listen, learn, and build trust. She knew that true change required more than technology, it demanded cultural transformation. Meanwhile, Susan's health posed new concerns. Mildred balanced caregiving with leadership, the delicate dance of holding space for another's vulnerability while pursuing a shared vision. Their love deepened through these trials, a testament to resilience forged in the fires of life's uncertainties. One night, during a power outage caused by winter storms, Mildred sat beside Susan, candlelight flickering softly around them. They talked about legacy, about the meaning of time and purpose. Mildred confessed her fears. That despite all she'd done, there were moments when she felt invisible again. Susan squeezed her hand, reminding her, "You are the spark that lights 1,000 flames. Age doesn't define your worth, your courage does." The words settled in Mildred's heart like a warm embrace. They renewed her commitment to the work and to living fully in each moment. As spring approached, Mildred received an invitation to a summit on aging innovation held at a prestigious university. She was slated as a keynote speaker, a recognition of the impact her journey had made. Preparing for the speech, Mildred reflected on how far she'd come, from the lonely days of doubt to this stage of influence and hope. On the day of the summit, standing before a crowd of researchers, policymakers, and advocates, Mildred shared her story with raw honesty. She spoke of fear, failure, and the fierce determination to reclaim life's narrative at any age. The audience was captivated, many moved to tears. Her message was clear. Innovation must be human-centered, inclusive, and grounded in empathy. Afterward, a young researcher approached her, eyes shining with admiration. "You've changed how we think about aging and technology," he said. "Thank you for leading the way." Mildred smiled, feeling the profound truth of connection. The journey was far from over, but the path was illuminated by shared purpose. Back home, the robot continued to evolve, its presence a comforting companion to many. Mildred often thought of Elon Musk's words about failure and risk, how pushing boundaries was essential to growth. She embraced each challenge as an opportunity to learn and improve. One afternoon, as she tinkered with a new feature designed to play users' favorite music based on mood detection, Mildred realized the project had become more than a machine, it was a vessel of hope, resilience, and love. Looking out at the blooming garden beyond her window, she whispered, "We are never too old to dream, to build, to change." And with that, Mildred pressed forward into the unfolding future, ready to light the way for others still searching for their own spark. Spring had blossomed fully when Mildred received the unexpected invitation. It was from a prestigious tech incubator nestled in Silicon Valley, a place known for nurturing young innovators and daring startups. The letter was clear, they wanted her to lead a new initiative focused on elder technology innovation. Mildred stared at the crisp paper, her heart pounding with a mixture of disbelief and exhilaration. How had she, a woman well into her 70s, become a beacon in a world obsessed with youth? The question echoed in her mind but was quickly replaced by a surge of determination. She accepted. Leaving her quiet town behind, Mildred journeyed west, the plains hum a steady pulse beneath her thoughts. Arriving at the incubator, she was greeted by a vibrant mix of engineers, designers, and entrepreneurs, all buzzing with energy and ideas. At first, she felt like an outsider among the young tech prodigies, their fast talk and confident strides a reminder of a world she had only recently entered. But soon, Mildred realized her greatest asset was not her technical expertise but her lived experience, the wisdom of decades, the empathy born of hardship and resilience. She shared stories of her community, the elders who had been marginalized and dismissed, and how technology could be a tool of liberation rather than exclusion. Her words resonated deeply, sparking new conversations about inclusivity and the human side of innovation. The project she led focused on creating adaptable technology that responded not only to physical needs but emotional and social ones as well. Collaborating with psychologists, gerontologists, and engineers, Mildred championed a holistic approach that saw elders not as problems to solve but as partners in design. One afternoon, while testing prototypes in a nearby assisted living facility, Mildred encountered Robert, a former jazz musician in his 80s with a twinkle in his eye and a deep sadness hidden beneath. Robert had been resistant to the robot at first, wary of machines replacing human connection. But as Mildred showed him the robot's new feature, an ability to play personalized music playlists and even suggest songs based on mood, his face lit up. Together, they reminisced about the songs of his youth, the rhythms that had shaped his life. For the first time in months, Robert smiled freely, tapping his fingers to the beat. It was a breakthrough that affirmed the project's purpose, technology that healed hearts, not just bodies. Meanwhile, Mildred kept in close contact with Susan, whose health had stabilized, providing a steady source of support and grounding. Their nightly phone calls were a lifeline, moments of tenderness and shared strength that reminded Mildred of the power of love to sustain through change. As the weeks passed, the incubator's walls seemed to pulse with possibility. Mildred's leadership inspired a new generation to think differently about aging, not as decline, but as a phase rich with potential and creativity. She pushed for prototypes that adapted to individual stories, respecting the uniqueness of each user. Yet, the fast pace and high stakes also brought moments of doubt and fatigue. Mildred grappled with imposter syndrome, the old voice whispering she was too old, too slow, too irrelevant. But each time, she drew strength from the community she'd built, the elders whose lives had been touched, the colleagues who believed in the mission, and the quiet words of Elon Musk she carried with her: when something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. One chilly evening, as she walked through a nearby park lined with cherry blossoms just beginning to bloom, Mildred reflected on the arc of her journey. From the lonely days of regret and self-doubt to this vibrant moment of impact, she saw clearly that transformation was not a destination but a lifelong process. It was in the choices made each day, to hope, to act, to connect. At the incubator's annual showcase, Mildred presented the latest prototype, a robot named Companion, designed with advanced emotional intelligence and customizable features. The audience, a mix of investors, tech leaders, and elder advocates, responded with enthusiasm and admiration. After the presentation, a young entrepreneur approached her, eyes shining. "You're changing how the world sees aging," he said. "Thank you for showing us what's possible." Mildred smiled, the warmth spreading through her like sunlight. Back home, she continued to nurture the Spark community, those who had joined her in embracing change and challenging limitations. They exchanged stories, advice, and encouragement, a digital campfire that connected hearts across distances. Mildred realized that her greatest legacy was not the technology itself, but the community it had built, the shared courage to defy expectations and reclaim life's narrative. One quiet night, as she settled into bed, Mildred pulled out a worn notebook, its pages filled with reflections and dreams. She wrote a letter to her younger self, the woman once paralyzed by fear and regret. "You are braver than you know," she penned. "Your age is not your cage but your wings. Keep dreaming. Keep building. Keep loving. The world needs your light." With a deep breath, Mildred closed the notebook and gazed out the window at the stars, feeling a profound peace. Her journey was far from over, but she was ready to keep pushing boundaries, to keep sparking change, to keep proving that it is never too late to become who you are meant to be. And in that moment, surrounded by the quiet strength of night, Mildred knew that the Elon Musk robot they didn't want the world to see was not just a machine. It was a symbol, a testament to courage, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. The summer sun warmed the coastal town where Mildred had returned, its golden rays filtering through the tall pines that bordered her garden. The salty breeze carried the scent of the ocean, mingling with the fresh aroma of blooming wildflowers. After months in Silicon Valley, the pace of life here was slower, gentler, a balm for her restless spirit. But Mildred knew the work was far from over. Her time at the incubator had sparked new ideas, and the call to action still pulsed within her. She spent mornings walking along the rocky shore, her thoughts drifting like the tide, reflecting on the delicate balance between innovation and intimacy. Technology was a tool, yes, but the heart of her mission was connection, the invisible threads that bind us, no matter our age or circumstance. One afternoon, as she sat on a weathered bench overlooking the sea, her phone buzzed with a message from Susan. The note was simple but profound: "Keep going. You are the spark in the dark." Those words settled deep within Mildred, a reminder that even in moments of solitude, she was never truly alone. Inspired, Mildred began sketching plans for a new project, one that combined the robot's capabilities with storytelling, creating a platform where elders could share their lives, wisdom, and dreams. She imagined a digital tapestry woven from voices that history too often silenced, a way to preserve memory and foster belonging. The idea took root quickly, and Mildred rallied a small team of volunteers from her community, bridging generations through shared purpose. Together, they built prototypes and tested features, incorporating feedback from elders eager to tell their stories. The project, named Echoes, became a beacon for those longing to be heard. Mildred organized gatherings in the local library, where elders gathered to record their narratives, some trembling with vulnerability, others radiant with pride. Each story was a testament to resilience, tales of love and loss, of dreams chased and wisdom earned. One afternoon, Mildred listened to a recording from a man named George, who spoke of his time as a civil rights activist. His voice carried the weight of history and hope, reminder that every generation carried the seeds of change. The stories gathered by Echoes began to attract attention beyond the town. News outlets featured the project as a groundbreaking example of technology serving humanity's deepest needs. Emails arrived from people across the country, eager to start similar initiatives. Mildred realized the power of storytelling, not just as preservation but as a catalyst for empathy and understanding. Yet, as the project blossomed, Mildred faced new personal challenges. Susan's health declined, and the seasons of caregiving demanded patience and grace. The roles they had once shared began to shift, and Mildred grappled with the bittersweet reality of change. In these moments, she drew strength from the very stories Echoes collected, finding solace in the shared human experience of loss and love. One evening, sitting beside Susan's bedside, Mildred held her hand and whispered, "Your story is part of a greater whole, a light that guides me forward." Susan smiled weakly, a quiet affirmation of their bond. At the same time, Mildred continued to engage with the broader tech world, advocating for elder-centered design and ethical innovation. She spoke at conferences and workshops, challenging the industry to rethink assumptions and embrace inclusivity. Her voice carried the weight of lived experience, a powerful counterpoint to data and algorithms. Through it all, Mildred never lost sight of the small moments. The laughter shared over coffee with Susan, the touch of a friend's hand, the gentle hum of the robot as it assisted an elder to stand or reach for a book. These moments were the heartbeat of her work, the proof that technology, when guided by compassion, could transform not just lives but communities. One afternoon, as Mildred reviewed feedback from Echoes users, she noticed a message from a young man named David. He wrote about how listening to his grandmother's stories through the platform had healed old wounds and rekindled their relationship. "Your work gave me a gift I never expected, the chance to know her again," he said. Mildred felt tears welling, the cycle of connection and healing spinning outward in ways she had only dreamed. As summer waned, Mildred organized a celebration of Echo's first anniversary, inviting storytellers, volunteers, and supporters to share in the joy of creation. The event was held in the town's community hall, decorated with photos and quotes from the stories collected. Elders stood to read passages, their voices strong and clear. The room vibrated with emotion, a tapestry of voices weaving a new narrative about aging, purpose, and belonging. At the end of the evening, Mildred addressed the crowd. "We have created more than a project," she said. "We have built a sanctuary for memory, a bridge between generations, and a testament to the power of human connection. This is our legacy." The applause was thunderous, a symphony of gratitude and hope. Later, as the hall emptied and the stars emerged, Mildred sat quietly, feeling the weight and wonder of the journey. She thought of Elon Musk's words about taking risks and challenging limits, recognizing that her own path had been shaped by the courage to embrace uncertainty. In the stillness, she made a vow, to keep listening, to keep building, to keep igniting sparks in the lives of those who might otherwise be forgotten. And as the night wrapped around her like a comforting shawl, Mildred smiled, knowing that the story they had begun was far from finished. It was a story of transformation, resilience, and the unyielding light of the human spirit. Autumn arrived with a quiet intensity, the trees outside Mildred's window ablaze in shades of amber and crimson, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind before surrendering to the earth. Inside her home, the glow of a single lamp illuminated the pages of a journal she had begun months earlier, a chronicle of her journey, her hopes, and the lessons learned along the way. The weight of years pressed lightly on her shoulders now, replaced by a steady strength born of purpose. Yet, beneath the calm surface, a new challenge stirred. News had come of a corporate giant planning to develop a competing robot. One designed without the empathy, the heart, that defined Mildred's creation. The announcement was wrapped in slick marketing, promises of efficiency and cost savings. But to Mildred, it felt like a stark reminder of the very problem she fought against, a world too quick to replace human dignity with cold convenience. The community she had nurtured rallied around her. Voices rose in blogs, letters, and social media posts defending the vision of technology that honored the fullness of life, not just its mechanics. Mildred organized a virtual town hall, inviting advocates, elders, and experts to discuss the ethical implications and advocate for a more compassionate future. The conversation was fierce, passionate, and hopeful, a testament to the power of collective action. In the midst of this, Mildred faced moments of exhaustion and doubt. Could she truly make a difference against corporate giants? Was her small community's voice enough in the vast machinery of capitalism? But then she remembered the spark that had ignited her own transformation, the words of Elon Musk about persistence, about refusing to accept limits imposed by fear or convention. She pressed forward, fueled by the knowledge that meaningful change often begins at the margins. Meanwhile, Susan's health journey took an unexpected turn. A breakthrough treatment offered hope, and together they navigated the uncertainty with courage and grace. Their bond deepened, woven from shared struggles and quiet victories. One evening, as autumn rain tapped gently against the windowpane, Susan whispered, "You are never alone in this. Our story, your story, will light the way for others." Those words became a balm to Mildred's soul. The Echoes project continued to thrive, its digital halls echoing with stories from across the country. New partnerships formed with libraries, community centers, and elder care organizations, expanding the reach and impact. Mildred worked tirelessly to ensure the technology remained accessible and adaptable, resisting pressure to simplify or sanitize the narratives it preserved. She believed in the raw, unfiltered power of truth to heal and inspire. At a conference in Washington, D.C., Mildred spoke before a panel of policymakers, urging for greater support of elder-centered innovation and ethical tech development. Her voice, steady and impassioned, cut through the rhetoric. "We must remember," she said, "that behind every statistic is a human life, a story waiting to be told, a dignity waiting to be honored." The response was overwhelmingly positive, signaling a shift in attitudes and priorities. Returning home, Mildred found solace in small rituals, a cup of chamomile tea shared with Susan, the first snowfall dusting the garden, the familiar hum of the robot assisting neighbors with daily tasks. These moments reminded her that progress was measured not only in headlines but in everyday acts of kindness and connection. One afternoon, while reviewing messages from Echoes users, Mildred discovered a letter from a man named James, a veteran who credited the platform with helping him reconnect with estranged family members. His words were raw and honest, describing the loneliness of war and the healing power of being heard. Mildred felt a surge of gratitude, knowing their work had touched lives in profound ways. As winter's chill settled in, Mildred reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the moments of fear and triumph, the loss and love, the spark that refused to be extinguished. She understood now that transformation was not a single event but a continuous unfolding, a dance between hope and hardship. And as she prepared to share her story one last time, she carried with her a message for all who felt left behind, forgotten, or too old to change: you are not alone. Your story matters. The spark inside you is waiting to ignite a new beginning. With a heart full of peace and purpose, Mildred stepped forward into the next chapter of life, ready to light the way for others still searching for their own spark in the dark. The morning light spilled gently through the lace curtains of Mildred's living room, casting soft patterns on the worn wooden floor. Outside, the world stirred awake, a familiar rhythm of birdsong, distant church bells, and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Mildred sat quietly, a steaming cup of coffee cradled in her hands, the weight of years and experience settling comfortably within her. Today was a day of reflection, culmination, and new beginnings. The journey she had embarked on months, then years ago, was reaching a profound moment, not an end, but a doorway. The robot they called companion had become more than a machine. It was a symbol, a testament to the power of empathy and innovation fused with humanity. What began as a small spark in a lonely heart had grown into a movement, one that challenged the narratives of aging and redefined what was possible. Mildred thought back to the moment it all changed. The fragile flicker of hope sparked by a voice she admired from afar, a man whose relentless defiance of limits ignited her own courage. Elon Musk's words had been a beacon in the darkest nights, a reminder that the impossible was often just a frontier waiting to be crossed. But more than that, the journey had taught her that transformation was not reserved for the young or the fearless alone. It belonged to anyone brave enough to embrace change, to confront doubt, and to hold on to hope even when the world whispered otherwise. In the week since the last conference, Mildred had felt a steady stream of messages from elders across the country, letters, emails, and videos sharing stories of renewal, reconnection, and rediscovery. They spoke of rekindled passions, mended relationships, and a newfound sense of purpose. This ripple effect was the legacy she had longed for, proof that the spark she had ignited could become a blazing fire, warming hearts and lighting paths. One afternoon, a surprise visit brought fresh joy. David, the young man whose grandmother's story had touched Mildred so deeply, arrived with his own mother and children in tow. Their laughter filled the house, a bridge across generations, a living embodiment of the connections her work had fostered. Watching them, Mildred felt the profound truth of her journey, that age was not a barrier but a bridge, a path to deeper understanding and shared humanity. Yet, the journey was not without its shadows. Susan's health had declined steadily, their time together marked by tender caregiving and quiet farewells. On a crisp autumn morning, Susan passed with a peaceful smile, her hand in Mildred's. The grief was deep and raw, a poignant reminder of life's fragile beauty. But even in sorrow, Mildred found strength. She carried Susan's memory as a beacon, a source of love and courage to fuel the road ahead. In the days that followed, Mildred returned to the garden, tending the flowers that had witnessed so many seasons of change. The earth beneath her fingers was cool and rich, alive with possibility. She planted bulbs that would bloom long after she was gone, a living metaphor for legacy and hope. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, Mildred sat on her porch with the robot companion beside her. It had learned to recognize the rhythms of life, to offer a gentle presence, a reminder that even in solitude, one could find comfort and connection. She smiled, feeling a quiet gratitude for this curious creation born from human hands and heart. The future stretched before her, vast and unwritten. Mildred knew that while her chapter might be closing, the story was far from over. The spark she had kindled was now a flame carried by countless others, each adding their own light to the tapestry of change. Before retiring for the night, Mildred opened her journal one last time and wrote, "I was never too old. I was never too late. I was just waiting for permission to matter again. And now, I give that permission to you." With a deep breath, she closed the book, a smile of serene triumph on her lips. Outside, stars twinkled in the endless sky, a reminder that within each of us burns a light, waiting to shine through the darkness. And in that light, there is no limit, no age, no end, only the infinite possibility of becoming. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?